What up, everybody? Dan Titus here with the Buckets Fantasy Basketball Podcast here on the Action Network, presented by Prize Picks. I'm joined by my host, as usual, Adam Koffler, fantasy expert. What's up, dude? How's your week 18 for football slash fantasy basketball going?
Oh, we're brewing. I made my first fantasy basketball trade this past weekend, so I'm ready to see what I get out of that in terms of my value going forward. I'm ready to talk about it on the podcast today.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that because it's going to have some relevance to one of the topics we're going to get into. Not only just give you a quick week in review and obviously give you our week 13 look ahead for all of the waivers that we're targeting for week 13, but Adam's going to go over some playoff scenarios that you may want to pay attention to if you're in contention right now. Some things you might want to be thinking about as you're preparing for that. So let's get into the action, man. I want to start off talking about it top of the a couple milestones that happened last week in week 12. Trae Young dropped 56 points and 14 dimes. That is the most assists ever for a 50-point performance. He did that against the Portland Trailblazers on Monday. And Jaylen Brown notched his first triple-double of his career. He dropped 22 points with 11 rebounds and 11 assists on Saturday against the New York Knicks. And speaking about the Knicks for a second, really crazy scenario for Evan Fournier here. This dude just seems to ball only against the Celtics. He came in averaging 35 points, 6 rebounds, shooting 55% from the field, 54% from three, hitting 6.7 3-pointers per contest versus the Knicks. Against everybody else, or excuse me, against the Celtics, against everybody else, he's averaging 11 points, 2.4 rebounds, shooting 39% from the field, 35% from three, and only 2.3 threes made per game. He's 181 overall this season, came in with a preseason rank of 93. I think he's a waivers guy, and I see him floating around in our competitive league on waivers in and out. I don't really know that you can trust him. He's really good against the Celtics, and that's about it.
Yeah, no, it's a no for me, dog, as Randy Jackson would say. This guy only torches his former team. Revenge narrative very much so matters for Evan Fournier. And it's funny I remember seeing on Twitter like the amount of people that are going to look up Fournier, based on his performance. You don't want to do that on Google, so just stay away from the Twitter searches on Fournier. Feel free to go ahead and do that, but you don't probably don't want to do that. But but yeah, he's not a guy that I'm interested in, unless for some reason the Knicks had a 5-game schedule during a week. You're not going to get much out of Fournier outside 3-pointers, every time he plays the Celtics.
Yeah, and he's not really playing that much better considering how many injuries the Knicks have gone through over the course of the last couple of weeks, man. They've had a lot of mainstays in their starting lineup that aren't there. So he should be playing better, especially for the amount of money he's getting. Was he getting 4 years, 70 M's, 72 million, something like that? So yeah, he's definitely playing.
That's Kenny Galladay type money.
Yeah, he's a bum too. Ooh, man. But yeah, so wanted to continue on. The Lakers, this is really about LeBron James just continuing his elite play. He's 4th overall by average last week. 30 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 threes, 4 stocks. And the more surprising part of LeBron's stats is that he's actually hitting free throws. He shot 81% in week 12 because he got so much volume. But if he's hitting free throws, definitely raises his value.
Yeah, he's shooting what's he shooting on the year? 78%, and that's up from the upper 60s for the last few years of his career. So yeah, that was the biggest knock on him. And then, we're seeing him play 36 to 38 minutes a game, which is, like we've been talking about, is absolutely insane, but doesn't look like it's going to slow down. And we haven't heard anything on the Anthony Davis front. Not that that's going to like even slow down LeBron that much. Like I don't trust AD going forward. Like, if we're talking about like buy low candidates here, like AD is not necessarily number one on my list because I don't think the dude can stay healthy. So ride this wave on LeBron, and it's crazy what he's doing in his what season is this? 16, something like that. 17.
Definitely a lot. I mean, I just know he's 37. I mean,
right. So just insane that he's legitimately like the number one player in 9-cat leagues. Like this dude is just on fire.
Yeah. Another guy that's on fire, Malik Monk.
Yes.
Ranked 12 overall over the last 7 days. And he's dropping 20. This is crazy to look at. 25 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, a block, 55% field goal, and he's hitting 6 threes per contest. Just crazy. And only 1 turnover. I mean, is he here to stay? I think he is. Like,
Yeah, he is.
He's got to be.
He is. LeBron needs Malik Monk type. Like in the starting lineup, gets buckets. Like this is exactly what the Lakers need. And if it was gonna be one of the guys that they brought in the offseason. And
One of them.
right, because they brought in we talked to Jovan Buha at the beginning of the season, and they brought in like 6-7 dudes, guys that could all score, and we're thinking like, oh, maybe it's gonna be Kendrick Nunn or like Wayne Ellington, but Malik Monk is like proving he can still get buckets, and he's still a young guy. So
yeah, very young, very young. He's never really got a chance, right? Like every time he got in on the Hornets, it's always because of injuries, and he was always a microwave. But I think he's found the right team. I think he was always one of them LA type dudes. Like I feel like he just fits in the system, and it just so happens that LeBron has like literally no offense. So by need, he's just going to be shooting more, right? So I think he has a great opportunity.
He never played over 20 minutes per game in his career prior to being with the Lakers, and this season he's playing 26 minutes a game, and in the last 7-8 games he's playing minutes in the mid 30s. So he's definitely a guy that should be rostered in all 12 team leagues if he's still out there.
Yeah. And let's talk about the Grizzlies for a moment here. Ja Morant, easily one of the best players last week. He's currently 29th overall in 9 category head-to-head leagues. I know you didn't see that coming. I didn't either. But he's averaging 28, 7, and 7 with 1.7 stock, shooting 53% from the field over the last week. Man, news just dropped, though. Dillon Brooks is going to be missing 3 to 5 weeks, so that should have him out till the All-Star break. So that's going to open up more minutes for DeAnthony Melton here. And he had a great game on Saturday night in only 23 minutes. So you got to feel like he's the ad and the biggest beneficiary if Brooks is going to be out of the lineup here.
No doubt, because Desmond Bane is what he is, right? He's a top 50 player, 9 cat. He's going to get you 24-4, a couple steals, and some threes. His role doesn't really change. It's DeAnthony Melton who's going to see more minutes. He could even enter the starting lineup. You see that when like Ja Morant missed the Grizzlies last game and it was Tyus Jones who stepped up into the starting lineup, it's because he's the direct, backup point guard. Whereas DeAnthony Melton's like this guard forward combo type deal where the Grizzlies like oftentimes have trouble finding minutes for him. But when Dillon Brooks is out of the lineup, Melton's pretty much guaranteed 25 plus. Like we saw in the beginning of the season, Melton was a must roster guy with Dillon Brooks out. Dillon Brooks came back and Melton became like a 15-minute per game type dude, and he was droppable. So now that Dillon Brooks is going to be out 3 to 5 weeks, Melton's going to smash. He's a per minute monster. He's getting like 3 stocks per game in just 20 minutes per game. So definitely a guy you want on your roster.
Yeah. And since we're talking about week 12, I told you guys to pick up Brandon Clark. He was definitely a smash this week. So hopefully you guys did get some value out of him. And there's still some injuries on the Memphis front, still some people in protocol. So he still might have some staying power here. Not as strong as having a 5-game week, but definitely worth around.
Yeah, so definitely hold on to Brandon Clark, especially as Steven Adams remains in the health and safety protocols.
Right. Great point. Sixers. Joel Embiid riding a heater right now. 6 straight games of 30 plus. Danny Green is now officially on the all calories team, joining Tony Snell for doing absolutely nothing in 28 minutes of action. Do believe that he did get a stat correction, giving him 1 steal, so it kind of tainted the true value of his all calories 0 burger that he put up in 28 minutes. But all that being said, he still sucks. So yeah, keep him on waivers for the foreseeable future. I think he's finally hit his wall and just age catching up with him. But Joel Embiid, though, I know you have him rostered on in our competitive league. What are your thoughts on him? He has been torching some pretty bad defenses, but the one sign that I see that's good for Embiid is that he's on the floor. He's really taking in stride being the leader of this team, and he hasn't really been missing many games as of late. So, I mean, you got to be feeling pretty good about rostering Joel Embiid right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Ride the wave with Joel Embiid. And we're going to talk about this coming up, but the Sixers have one of the most favorable fantasy basketball playoff schedules of any team in the NBA. So as long as Joel Embiid can stay on the floor And right now, right, Sixers aren't trading Ben Simmons, and we have no idea if they're going to do that. I mean, things have kind of been cool on that front. If they don't bring another guy in, and Ben Simmons kind of stays but doesn't play, Embiid looks like a guy who's going to be able to carry your team throughout the rest of the season and in the fantasy basketball playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely excited to have that conversation, and we'll get to that soon enough. Keep on moving through the league here. Kyrie Irving, he looked good in his return to play. The Nets do have 2 away games this week versus Portland and Chicago. So those that waited it out for Kyrie, at least you're going to get something out of him. You'll get a couple games this week, so enjoy that. But he did look really good, and obviously he's going to add more dynamic play to the Nets offense. Their defense still looks suspect, though.
We need to pause for a second and realize what we just said. Like, you just said that you have to take into account when the Nets are on the road. Like, yeah. How insane is that? Like,
I think it kind of gives more value to Patty Mills, because whenever there's a home game, he'll obviously play and Kyrie will be out. But you're right, it's just something you got to live with. But for those 2 games you're getting Kyrie, it's still worth it to roster him, right? Like, to a certain degree. I'm not. I mean, you're gonna trade. What do you trade Kyrie Irving for, being a part-time player? It's kind of difficult.
I would consider trade. Yeah, this is gonna sound crazy, but like, I would consider trading. Like, would you trade Kyrie Irving for Malik Monk?
Yeah, the way Malik. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable trade, to be honest,
right?
Because the way Malik Monk is playing, right? So
what you're doing is you're taking the name value of Kyrie, understanding that he's only going to play in probably a third of the Nets, however many next games, because you say a half, but like, maybe there's a back-to-back, or maybe there's he rests because he hasn't played in a while or something. So you figure he plays like a third of the games. Like that, I just don't like that from a head-to-head perspective. I'd rather a guy who's going to play every game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's brutal for a weekly league. Like, you can't rely on Kyrie at all. So yeah, I see the argument. I definitely see the argument to trade him. I just don't know. Maybe it is Malik Monk might be that someone might view him as like, oh, he got hot because the Lakers are down a bunch of players and he's just shining for a moment. But I don't know. I think Malik Monk has definitely proven that he can stick in this lineup. So that might be a good person to fetch for.
Yeah, potentially.
It's a good call. The Raptors missed. Fred VanVleet also registered his first triple-double on Saturday. Pretty much willed the Raptors back in a victory, man. Dropped like 20 straight points. Curious of your thoughts here, though. The Raptors are finally getting healthy. We see Pascal Siakam in the lineup, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, obviously a fixture, and then Fred VanVleet balling out, and then you still got Gary Trent Jr. there. Do you think that they can all coexist? Like, or are you concerned about anyone in particular's fantasy value now that they're all actually back on the court?
I love the Raptors from a fantasy perspective because they run a 7-8 man rotation, and all the starters, as long as the game is close, which the Raptors are pretty, they're a competitive squad with their starting 5. So most of their games are pretty close, and they're playing minutes in the mid to upper 30s. And all those guys have value because they all get steals and blocks, essentially. And Gary Trent, obviously, with the 3-pointers. So no, I'm not worried about any of their value. And I think going forward, you can count on, all of Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, and even Chris Boucher when they play against a team that, doesn't have a typical starting center. And then just like the Sixers, we're going to talk a little bit about the Raptors too, with their favorable fantasy basketball playoff schedule. And also, here's another thing with the Raptors. They've only played 36 games so far this season, which is the lowest amount of games so far in the NBA, whereas the Milwaukee Bucks have played 42 games. So between now and the end of the season, you get 6 more games out of the Toronto Raptors than you would the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm not saying go ahead and trade all your Bucks and go acquire all your Raptors, but it's definitely something to consider. Like 6 more games of a Fred VanVleet or an OG Anunoby might be more valuable than a Drew Holiday, 6 less games of Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton.
Fair assessment. So yeah, real quick, wanted to get your thoughts on Cam Johnson. Over the last 14 days, he is currently 33 overall. And I mean, his splits are crazy. 51% from the field, 93% from the line, shooting over 40% from 3, 17-5. Doesn't really do much in the assist department or stocks, but he's hitting 4 threes per contest. What do you think his outlook will be once Jay Crowder returns?
Yeah, so Jay Crowder actually came back on Saturday. He entered the starting lineup, but he only played 26 minutes in his return. Maybe it was because, it's his first game back in a while, but it also could have been because Cam Johnson's been balling. So Cam Johnson still came off the bench, played 31 minutes, took 13 shots, and scored 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and no turnovers. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's not really a guy who's going to get you a lot of stocks, but he's very consistent. He's going to score the basketball and get you 3-pointers and some boards, actually. There's definitely a chance that he plays more minutes than Jay Crowder, even though Crowder starts. So he's a guy I'm holding on to, but probably temper expectations just a little bit. If so that game actually got out of hand a little bit against the Miami Heat. That's potentially why Jay Crowder only played 26 minutes. But for now, I think you got to hold on to Cam Johnson. Just see where it takes you.
Yeah, I agree with that. He scored double figures in 18 straight.
Wow.
He's hit at least 2 3-pointers in at least the last 12 games. The dude's an assassin. I mean, he's 6th in the NBA in 3-point percentage right now. So I think he's just playing too well that you bench him. And, with Jay Crowder, he's one of those veterans where he's really counted on for his defensive capabilities. And, with the Suns here, they might be looking for some firepower off the bench here. So I think Cam Johnson's certainly still going to earn significant minutes. So yeah, I agree. He's actually turned into be one of the steals of the waiver wires this season. Last team I wanted to talk about, the Wizards. Kyle Kuzma, we were going to mention him last week, and I think I just forgot to, but he's ranked 31st in overall in week 12, averaging 28, 11.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 stocks, 50% from the field, 2 3-pointers. Unbelievable. I mean, he was never really doing this for the Lakers. Probably it's because, he's always had to compete for a lot of buckets and opportunities just because he's had better players on the team. But, Bradley Beal has been kind of quiet, and I think Kyle Kuzma stepped up while Dinwiddie was also out. But now that Bradley Beal is back, he's 18th overall in the last week, and he's really upped his assists since Dinwiddie's been out to 9 per game. So just want to get your thoughts on the Wizards, mainly Kyle Kuzma, and if he can sustain his performance right now. And, Bradley Beal, do you see him pretty much being this type of Bradley Beal, the late first, early second round pick that you spent your draft capital on?
Yeah, I think Bradley Beal's a very unexciting player that, is just kind of there for fantasy basketball. It's not a guy that I was actively like looking for. It's kind of like he's kind of like Nick Chubb. Like, he's just a guy that, like, when he fell to you, it's like, yeah, like, I guess I should probably just go draft this guy, hit the button, and he'll get me like 25, 5 and 5, and it'll be fine. But yeah, Kuzma looks really good right now, averaging 20 plus, or he scored 20 plus in his last 6 games. He's playing like 40 minutes a game. The Wizards just run up and down the floor with every team, just score a ton of points. And he's averaging 8.4 rebounds per game this season. Just incredible. That's a career high for him. So he's crashing the boards too. His usage is just extremely high, averaging, I think it's at 3 assists per game. He's really never been an assist guy. And 3 assists per game out of a guy like Kyle Kuzma is like way more than you could have asked for. Now, however, the Wizards are getting a lot of guys back here really, really shortly. But it's going to be in the front court mostly. So Thomas Bryant's about to return from his ACL injury. Montrezl Harrell's about to come back off the protocols. And Rui Hachimura, who's been away for personal reasons, is actually coming back too. So that's 3 guys right there who likely take minutes away from Daniel Gafford. But also Kyle Kuzma's been playing the 3/4. Maybe we see some of his minutes decline as well as other guys get, in the rotation a little bit more. Like, now might actually be a good time to maybe sell high on Kyle Kuzma, who's been playing out of his mind the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think Rui Hachimura has been on the questionable designation for quite some time now as he's gone through COVID and injury. So excited to see what he can bring to the table here, because they did spend they spent a lottery pick on him, and he played pretty well last year. So certainly some time for him to get on the floor. And you're right, Montrezl Harrell and Thomas Bryant are certainly going to cannibalize Daniel Gafford a little bit. So curious to see how that goes. But Daniel Gafford is what he is. He's really just a block specialist anyway. You shouldn't really be relying on him as a rebounds and points big. He's really just there defensively. So yeah, once Dinwiddie comes back, man, I think this Wizards team will be nearing full strength. But yeah, we'll see which players ultimately still remain fantasy relevant there. And then just to close out the conversation, I saw on Twitter there was some conversation going around with some experts around Kawhi Leonard. Chris Haynes from Yahoo Sports reported that he is ahead of schedule in his ACL rehab, and that there's the possibility of him returning to the court earlier than anticipated. So, want to get your take on it, whether you're going to pick up Kawhi Leonard or not.
Yeah, so for me, the Clippers are a fringe playoff team, and to be honest, if Paul George is out for a while, they're likely not making the playoffs. So I don't know why they would bring Kawhi Leonard back in the fold and bring him back too early, where he's not going to do much. I mean, obviously Kawhi Leonard can carry a team on his back, but coming off of a major injury, I'm not sure that the Clippers would want to risk that. And also, if you look at it, the Clippers have the one of the worst fantasy basketball playoff schedules. They only play 9 games in the final 3 weeks of the fantasy season, which is the lowest of any team, tied with the Memphis Grizzlies. So if Kawhi does even come back, there's a week where the Clippers only play 2 games, and that's week 22. So just there's plenty of guys that keep going in and out of health and safety protocols that you probably want to use your IL spots for that. Unless for whatever reason you're in first or second place, have a really comfortable lead, and you're confident you're going to make the playoffs, that's probably the only situation where I'd take a shot on rostering Kawhi.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think it's really only worth picking up Kawhi if you're in a position where you can afford to and you have IL spots available. Our league, we have 2 or 3 IL spots. Right now, I'm reserving most of those for folks that are already in COVID or haven't gotten COVID yet, and they're about to, and I don't know it yet. So in this environment, you just really got to be really flexible, and picking up somebody like Kawhi Leonard who may not even play. I don't know if it's really worth the risk unless you can afford to do it. So, I'm out on picking them up right now. I did see someone pick them up in our competitive league, and they're middle of the pack, so maybe they're just COVID fortunate right now where they actually have some IL spots available. But
exactly right.
I'd actually rather pick up someone like James Wiseman, who at least I know is going to play this season and actually could get some minutes post All-Star break. So
keep it
keep
it in Los Angeles. I'd rather pick up Isaiah Hartenstein, who said on TikTok that he's gonna be back soon. Like,
I mean, Zubac also did just come back too. So
that's okay. Hartenstein's a beast, permanent beast. He's D'Anthony Melton, big man.
Yeah, I think you might be overselling how bad the Clippers are right now. They are in 9th place. They're 19-21. They're only a few games back out of the 8th, out of the 7th spot.
Yeah, so who's carrying them to the playoffs? Reggie Jackson, Eric Bledsoe, Serge Ibaka?
I mean, you'd be surprised. I guess Serge Ibaka's actually played okay. But it's really just Marcus Morris who's been carrying them.
Amir Coffey had 21 points on Sunday.
Yeah.
Luke Kennard's coming back. They're staying competitive without Luke Kennard. So don't sleep on the regular rotation Clippers.
Yeah, I think it's really a testament to Ty Lue, man. He's just playing up these backup dudes. Because I didn't actually think, I was just betting on the Clippers the other day against the Suns, and they kept it competitive against a really good team. Now the Suns weren't at full strength. They didn't have Ayton, but they still hung with them. So yeah, I think you're right, man. There's definitely something there that they should at least remain somewhat competitive in the playoff race, and that may spark the interest of Kawhi coming back early. But right now, I don't see it because they don't have Paul George. Also, if you don't have Paul George there, what's the point?
True. Speaking of coaches, Eric Spoelstra just took a Miami squad without Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler into Phoenix, and a full strength Phoenix Suns squad, and beat them by 20 plus. Like,
dusted them.
Get out of here. Eric Spoelstra, coach of the year.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give him coach of the year just for unlocking Omer Yurtseven, because that guy's just been awesome.
He looked like Nikola Jokic on Saturday. He had like 9 assists.
I tried to tell you in the offseason, man. Like back in the day, I was like, yo, I saw him in person in the Sacramento Classic or whatever, the California Classic they call in the summer league. And this dude was just like he just looked like he belonged, and like he was doing everything so easily in the summer league. I was like, yo, this guy's got to get minutes in real life. And it just so happens a Bam Adebayo injury just lucked up, because we haven't seen Dwayne Dedmon. You're right. We said it a few weeks ago. Dwayne Dedmon's a dead man. He hasn't been I haven't seen him on the floor since.
I remember exactly where I was when I got the notification that Bam Adebayo was going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. I was coming out of a Wawa gas station, and my first immediate thought was, okay, go pick up Dwayne Dedmon immediately. And this guy replied, I don't remember who it was. He replied to me on Twitter. He's like, don't sleep on Omer Yurtseven. I'm like, who the hell is Omer Yurtseven? And here we are, and Omer Yurtseven is like keeping people afloat in fantasy basketball leagues.
100%. Man, how are you going to go? Well, number one, shout to Wawa. I miss Wawa. And 2, How you gonna give somebody else credit for that Omar Yurtseven, man? I got the receipts for that. Well, actually, we
Yeah,
both
but
got the Cat
I
Fantasy
can, I
Pros
can, I
thing,
can, I can pull that too, and then Action can retweet it.
it's true. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit before I get into the Week 13 waivers. We're gonna fast forward to the end of the season, and for those that might be vying for a playoff spot, how you can start prepping for those early scheduling advantages and target teams that have fantasy friendly schedules at the end. So, Koffler, break it down for us. What did you create, and why is it important for fantasy managers to consider?
Yeah, so basically what I did is I looked at weeks 21 through 23, and that's the fantasy basketball playoffs, at least in Yahoo leagues. And so what I did was I took the total number of games that each team plays, and instead of just looking at it just, as a total number of games in a vacuum, which you definitely could. You could say, okay, the Sixers play 12 games, the Trailblazers play 12 games. Like, these are the teams you want to target. But I went a little bit more granular than that, and I put in the equation back-to-backs. So it's a slight downtick because, players might be rested. The number of times that team plays on a 10-plus game slate, because you may have guys that are sitting on your bench because you have too many players that play that night. So that's a slight downtick as well in the score. And then also blowout potential. So, if the best team in the league was playing like the Detroit Pistons or the Houston Rockets, or if the Detroit Pistons or Houston Rockets were playing like the best teams in the league, like, the Suns or the Bucks or the Nets or something like that. So I incorporated blowout potential into that as well. And I'll probably tweet this out, the little graphic that I created, but essentially what it comes down to is the Philadelphia 76ers, the Utah Jazz, Denver Nuggets, and Toronto Raptors have some of the best and most favorable playoff schedules down the stretch. And some of the worst ones are the Boston Celtics, Sacramento Kings, New Orleans Pelicans, and Phoenix Suns. So I'm a little salty because I just traded for Devin Booker, and then I put together my calculation for the best and worst fantasy playoff schedules. And, lo and behold, the Phoenix Suns have the worst fantasy basketball playoff schedule. So hopefully Devin Booker can carry me to the playoffs. But then, but right before the trade deadline hits, maybe he's a guy I want to get rid of so I don't have to deal with that headache, come playoff time.
Yeah, that'll be a fun exercise, acquiring Devin Booker, then selling him, and no one understanding, like, why are you selling Devin Booker after you just bought him? But that's interesting that you did that analysis. And I think the one aspect of it that I think is most valuable is the 10 game slate angle, mainly because there's going to be times where you're going to have to make those start and sit decisions. And when you have a full slate, it's not as advantageous because you're going to be losing some value there because people sit on your bench. When you can get those guys in the slates that are like 3 and 5 games where you get those extra production from those players, that's key. So I love that you factored that into there.
I actually, now that you said that, I feel like I should have weighted that even more because
I'd actually weight that more than the back-to-back to some degree.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. The Chicago Bulls in those 3 playoff weeks, they play 11 games, which is pretty solid because you either play 12, 11, 10, or 9. They play 11. But they're only on a 10-game slate twice, whereas the Phoenix Suns play 10 games and they're on a 10-plus game slate 6 times. More than half of their 10 games are on a 10-game slate. Like, that's not good because, like, there's gonna be guys that are sitting on your bench, and I mean, obviously you're gonna put Devin Booker in there, but you're gonna be losing out on a guy because you have Devin Booker.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So that's when the decisions become like the Cam Johnsons of the world. It's like, oh, do I want that guy in there, or I should probably be prioritizing someone on like the Chicago Bulls, like
yes,
I don't know, Kobe White or something like that.
Right? I hope that not all of our league mates listen to this because I will be packaging Devin Booker and Cam Johnson right ahead of the trade deadline for this reason.
Yeah, that's fair. But then you also acquired a player that, or no, you got rid of another team. Was it the San Antonio Spurs? You got rid of Derek White, right?
Yeah. So the Spurs are sort of middle of the pack. They only have 10 games in the playoff week. But yeah, I got rid of Derek White. I had to in order to get Devin Booker and Lonzo Ball back.
I also got Lonzo Ball though. So
I got Lonzo Ball, who's looking very favorable for the end of the season. Like I talked about the Toronto Raptors, they play the most amount of games from right now until the end of the season, and they have one of the most favorable fantasy playoff schedules. So
Right.
And I also like middle of the pack teams that can stay competitive with the best teams, and they don't necessarily blow out the worst teams either. Like the Toronto Raptors are looking mighty fine. Like those, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby. Those are guys that if it was me, I'd be targeting right now.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's a great analysis to do if you're in contention right now. Obviously, if you're, eighth or ninth, 10th in your league and you're still vying for a playoff spot, it's certainly important for you to just look at the weeks ahead and where you can get those scheduling advantages from either the slates, when you're targeting the Tuesday, Thursday slates or the slates that don't have a lot of games, or whatever angle you so choose. But yeah, I think that this is really helpful for you to get ahead and start preparing for that because and talk about your trade. So your trade was you traded Hamidou Diallo, Derek White, and Domantas Sabonis for was it Devin Booker,
Lonzo Ball,
and who was
D'Anthony Melton.
And D'Anthony Melton. Wow, talk about timely.
So I got sort of lucky on D'Anthony Melton with Dylan Brooks going down not even 24 hours after that trade, I don't think. Right. And I really was just like Sabonis to me, he's a guy that's going to score. He's going to get pretty good field goal percentage, right? Like 53, 54%. And he's going to get rebounds and some assists. I mean, sometimes he has, 7, 8 assists, but sometimes he's got, 2 or 3. He's not really a steals and blocks guy. He turns the ball over a lot and he crushes your free throw percentage. So I was doing really well in field goal percentage and rebounds categories week in and week out. And obviously Sabonis was a reason for that, but I thought I could get rid of a guy like that and still hold my own in those categories and get better at categories that I was competitive in, but losing most weeks. So like 3-pointers, steals, assists, and guys like Lonzo Ball, Devin Booker, and D'Anthony Melton can help me in those 3 categories. So I felt like I was becoming more competitive by getting those 3 guys on my team. Obviously, getting rid of Derek White hurts, but I still do have DeJounte Murray. So I'm still invested in that backcourt. And like I said, the Spurs only have 10 games of fantasy playoffs. So, I didn't really want 2 Spurs on my team come playoff time.
Yeah, I think the value in Sabonis is really, he's one of the best passing bigs in the NBA. At the power forward position, he currently ranks 5th overall with 4.5 per game. So that he's definitely a good source of that. And for whatever reason, over the last 2 seasons, Indiana has just been really injury prone, and he's been the only one that's been reliable. So he's just a benefactor of just having to get a ton of usage. But I agree with you. It's primarily his scoring ability, his rebounding at a high volume. But for what you're getting in terms of the long-term outlook, potentially a better positioning for maybe fulfilling some of the different needs of your team. Because right now, I believe you're 9th in the league.
Yeah, it's very you gotta take a look at your team and be like, what do I have coming down the pike? Yeah. And I do have Rashawn Holmes, who's been on IL. He should be back soon, and that should keep me afloat and some in the rebound and field goal percentage category. So,
right,
like I felt like I could get rid of that and then help myself in other places.
For sure. Yeah, it's a good trade, man. I see the value on both sides, but obviously, whatever works out best for your team, that's in the eye of the beholder. But I think from a scheduling perspective, you definitely won out there a little bit.
And here's another thing with that trade. We've heard the Pacers want to blow it up. Sabonis is his highest peak value right now. Like they're gonna, if they make a trade and bring guys in or deal Sabonis somewhere else, like his value cannot go up from where it is right now. It can only go down. Like he's probably
not more than a contender, right? I mean, they're not gonna send him to a bum ass team.
Yeah, so right now he's on a bad team and he just cooks. Yeah. Especially with Malcolm Brogdon not playing. And Brogdon's supposed to come back, LeVert will be back. And then the teams are gonna get shaken up a little bit. So we can only see Sabonis's value drop. He's not a top 10 fantasy asset. He's a top 25, top 30 fantasy asset because of some of his downfalls.
So, yeah, let's go into the Week 13 schedule. We got 11 teams playing 4 games, 18 teams playing 3 games, and only 1 team playing 2 games. That is the Los Angeles Lakers. So let's talk about some waivers. Some of the top guys for guards that I think you should definitely scoop up. Top of the list for me is Anthony Simons. Damian Lillard has been missing time. CJ McCollum still isn't back on the court yet. Portland sucks. All recipes for Anthony Simons to continue to cook. He dropped crazy 40-point performance earlier this week, honoring his grandfather. He's been cooking ever since, so I think he's definitely a priority add. We talked about Malik Monk earlier. Now the Lakers only played 2 games this week, but being that we were both convinced that he has way longer value than just as a streaming option, certainly want to go grab him. Another dark horse that I've been looking at is Pat Beverly, still under rostered, but he finished 28th overall last week. This was obviously because D'Angelo Russell was out for some time, and but he's the starting point guard, so he's actually putting up really good numbers over that time, averaging 8 dimes last week, and 14 points and 5 rebounds. So he's only 37% rostered. He's seen just under 30 minutes per contest, so you could do worse if you're looking for a point guard. Also, Alec Burks, he's just a guy that is fortunate that Kemba Walker's out, so he's going to continue to get minutes. This random guy, though, want to talk about, we were just talking about Indiana. Kiefer Sykes, he signed a 10-day deal, and all of a sudden last week, he was just cooking. Like, he dropped 20 points a couple games. He's giving you assists and rebounds. Kind of looks like he's been putting up these Faco Campazzo lines where getting you a couple steals, some assists, or whatever. But I think he's, assuming Brogdon's going to be out, he could be someone that you may want to look at because his contract did just get guaranteed for the rest of the season. So they clearly like him. And he also did catch a really nice tip slam, and he doesn't look very tall. So he's got some athleticism and bunnies to him. So, yeah, give me some other ideas of people you're liking for guards.
For guards, you could look at, John Morant missed Saturday with a thigh injury, I believe, but I'm not sure if that's a serious one. But obviously, if he were to miss more time, Tyus Jones becomes a must add there. We talked about Malik Monk. Kobe White's been playing a lot of minutes off the bench in Chicago. He looks like a decent streamer. The Bulls only played 3 games this week. So do the Pacers, though. So Kiefer Sykes and even like Lance Stevenson, I'm a little bit cooled on because they only played 3 games, and there's no way Lance to make him dance stays as relevant as he's been. Like Brogdon's got to come back here in the near future, and it's gonna he's gonna make him totally irrelevant.
Some forwards that have been playing really well. Marcus Morris, mentioned him before. Also Herb Jones. I can't speak enough about Herb Jones and what he does defensively, but he is just criminally under rostered right now. Yeti Osman is also playing pretty well for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have a ton of injuries, and he's been stepping up. Matisse Thybulle, I think, is a dark horse that you might be able to pick up. The Sixers do play four games this week, so he could still be getting minutes with Danny Green playing so terribly bad, and we know what he can do on the defensive end, so I think he's always a great stocks pickup. Royce O'Neal, I feel like he's just a guy that you're going to have to pick up and drop. Like, that's just, it is what it is. But Utah going through some COVID issues, so I think he could definitely be someone that could be worthwhile. Jeff Green, another guy that Denver, they play 4 games. He's still seeing minutes off the bench, but he's a guy that can put it. He can score. He can give you some defensive stuff and hit threes. So Jeff Green's always a cheap source of value. Trey Lyles is definitely a dude that's been playing well too.
Onyeka Okongwu of the Hawks. So Capella's missing Sunday's game. We don't know how long that the injury is going to last. So if Capella were to miss time, Okongwu's a really good option at center. And obviously, starting centers are hard to come by off the waiver wire. So get out ahead of that one and pick him up if Capella were forced to miss any time.
Yeah, and oddly, I mentioned it a while ago, but Gary Harris has just been torching Nets lately, and very, very odd how he's coming out this late, but he's getting minutes, so definitely works. And the Monty Morris, Campazzo, Denver has 4 games, so they're definitely guys that you could put in and out of your lineup if you're needing some assists and threes. And Campazzo's just been great defensively, so I'm a big fan of his. Serge Ibaka is probably a deep center if you need some rebounds and some blocks, but yeah, with Zubac coming back and also Isaiah Hartenstein, Serge may not be relied on as much, but he has been playing pretty well over the last week.
And also, one quick note here: the Pistons play they play the only back-to-back Monday, Tuesday this week. So even though a guy like Hamidou Diallo is a little bit cool now that Cade Cunningham and a couple other guys are back in the lineup for the Pistons, like he's maybe a guy that could be an early week streamer along with your Trey Lyles or your Corey Josephs, even off the bench if you're looking for a couple assists there, just to get that back to back first thing in the early in the week.
So would you say Hamidou Diallo, just because you mentioned him, would you consider that? Would you say that you sold him high?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, dude, he had a game of like 39 points. So yeah,
I mean,
like
but he did drop 17-6 with 3 steals and a block on Saturday night. So I mean, it's not like he just went. He's not going away, but he's still actually being pretty productive. So yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I think the
sell
person
high
who,
from 30 points for sure.
yeah, I mean, he was more of a throw in that trade.
Okay.
So it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting question because as the Pistons get towards the end of the season, and maybe they rest Cade Cunningham, or maybe other guys go down with whatever, and it's a guy like Hamidou Diallo who steps up and plays 35 minutes a game. Like we saw something similar, in Oklahoma City last season with Lou Dort and with Alexei Pokusevsky. Like you see some of these young guys who never got opportunities before, just ball because they're good players, but they just never get the minutes. So maybe he's a guy that down the stretch will pop his head back up. But yeah, he's probably here to stay. Insofar as 13 to 15 points, some peripheral stats, but he's never going to drop 35 to 40 points a game like he was when Cade Cunningham was out.
Yeah, he probably still has a threat of Jeremy Grant coming back at some point too.
True. I have no idea if the Pistons are bad.
Minutes.
Like when does Jeremy Grant ever come back, if at all?
Right. Yeah, it's fair. All right, that'll do it for the Week 13 look ahead. Make sure to check out the fantasy forecast with Joe Delira and myself. It's an article on theactionnetwork.com. So be sure to check that out if you want any other additional analysis for any prop bets or the fantasy week. Download the Action Network app to tail some of our experts. The Buckets betting show will be back on Tuesday with the big picture with Matt Moore, Ryan Palmer, and Brandon Anderson. And if you guys like this content, man, leave us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. We'd really appreciate it. All right, guys, we'll holler at you next week. Peace.